Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to do Inktober Day 5, and the prompt is long, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do just a long braid? And I didn't use a reference photo today, so I'm so excited about that. I'm trying to be a little bit more imaginative in my artwork, so I did this all from my imagination. So I think it helps that I know how to braid my own hair, so I think intuitively I know a little bit how the hair goes. So I just basically started sketching and kind of portioning off the hair into the little braid and making some indications with a pencil on where I want that to go. I didn't need too much pencil, and I went ahead and went in with some waterproof pen. These pens are the Pitt Artist pens, and you can get a set of 4 for under $10 on Amazon. And what I like is there is a super fine tip, a fine tip, a medium tip, and a brush tip. So you get a nice variety for not a lot of money. I think they're almost as good as microns. They may tend to smudge a little bit when wet if you haven't heat set them. I'm an ink-based pen, so as long as you do have them completely dry, they're not going to run with like going over with the water or watercolor or ink or anything like that. So I'm using the medium tip here so I can clearly see those lines, and these lines are going to be what I want to be kind of more of my darker lines. I'm going to go in with the brush tip pen at the end just to really accent stuff, but for now I just want to make sure I can really see my lines, because I am going to go in with some colored ink because I'm a color girl. I like to have color, maybe not in everything, but definitely for this project. I also find it's helpful when you're doing something with like a direction like the hair to turn the paper as you're working so that you can kind of be pulling that pen towards you and not be pushing it at an awkward angle, and then you'll get nice smooth kind of comfortable looking strokes instead of having awkward looking strokes. You know what I mean? If you look at a picture and it just looks a little awkward, like the artist wasn't comfortable where they were sketching it. And then where I needed it to be thicker, I just drew on a parallel line and just made some more hair lines, basically. I really had a lot of fun with this, and I just really loved how free I could be. The thought of this is pretty simple. I wanted to do rainbow hair, so just basically wanted to get a kind of an easy sketch in there that I could color. Now I'm going in with the fine tip pen, and I am pulling out some kind of hatching for shadow. So that's basically little parallel lines next to what I've already done. I'm deepening up the shade where the hair overlaps, just to kind of help pull apart those different plates of the braid. And that's what I like about this little set of pens, is that it's cheap and you get a few different line widths so that you can vary your lines in a project. And if I'm doing mixed media and I'm using it over something, I can be kind of rough on my materials. I don't have to worry about ruining something that's expensive either. And so I'm going through and doing that all through the hair. Now, obviously, I've sped this up. Pretty much all of my Inktober sketches, I am speeding up to 400%. So this took me about 45 minutes to do, and the video is going to be about 11 minutes. So just to give you an idea. Now I'm going in with a white vinyl eraser and just erasing all of my pencil lines, just erasing over the whole thing basically. And I like to use the white plastic or white vinyl erasers because they're more gentle on the paper. And this is a Jane Davenport journal where I've been doing most of my Inktober stuff, and it's a 90-pound watercolor paper, but use what you have. And I've used the mermaid markers to add a little bit of color, and now I'm going in with a water brush and spreading it around. And the mermaid markers are just like an ink-filled water brush basically. So if you don't have those, you could use a paintbrush and any sort of colored ink that you want if you're following along. And please do. I don't care if you copy any of my tutorials. That's why I put them there for you people to learn and inspire other people. So don't worry about that. Go ahead, paint it if you want to. So now what I've done is I've wet the hair because I didn't want the ink to be too strong on the hair. That ink and the mermaid markers are very strong. So by keeping a wet brush in my hand and also wetting the paper beforehand, I can vary my tone and shadow a little bit more. Because I do want to have shadows, in the hair, but I want to stick to kind of a transition between colors. So I want the colors to stay as pure as possible. So to get my shading, I'm basically varying the intensity of my ink, if that makes sense. And I didn't have an orange mermaid marker, so I just mixed red and yellow to make my orange. And again, going in with a wet brush to spread the color around and kind of pull a little bit of that color up above into the red just to transition it so I have a nice smooth rainbow transition. I also recommend, if you're using these pens, or actually any sort of really juicy marker, is to have like a cheap plastic palette, or it could even be like a plate, anything that you can kind of scribble your marker out on, so that you can add a little water, you can lighten it, you can mix colors without damaging the tips or getting the tips messed up on your markers. And the one I have was $2 at Ocean State Job Lot, which is just a kind of a discount store we have in Maine. I think they're all over New England, but it's great. And then I can use up every bit of ink. I don't have to waste ink or get too much ink on my paper, or like squeeze it out on a piece of scrap paper and then have it go to waste. So it's a great way to conserve your supplies and make them more useful. So you gotta love that. So you can see I'm just basically going through the rainbow. I started off with red and bled it into orange and bled it into yellow, bled it into green, and then into blue, and now I'm going into purple, and I'm just making sure that I don't get too much ink down at once, especially with colors like blue and purple that tend to be really dark. I want to make sure that there's enough water on my paper, or that I have a damp brush in my hand so I can spread that color out a little bit so that I don't end up with the look of black in the hair. I only want the lines to be black, and I want the colors to really kind of show up. And now I'm transitioning into pink, and I realized that I'm going to need to go back into the first color in the series, the red, and then orange, and then yellow again, because the hair was so long that that I needed to repeat some colors there. So you could have it spaced out. You could map it out beforehand and divvy it up equally and then have it just go through the spectrum once. But I kind of like this because I don't know, makes it seem longer, and just it gives more color, and I love anything rainbow. And now I'm taking some of that leftover ink from my palette and just flicking it on the background, because I kind of got the idea as I was doing this, wouldn't it be cool if I had like a nebula in the background? But I didn't want to go in and paint everything dark. I like that. I also like the white in the background, so by flicking this on, I kind of get that look of stars and nebula in the background without having to have everything dark, because I think that part of what I really like about the braid and the hair is how it really is striking against the white background. Now for a little bit deeper shadow, I'm going in with the pens on their own, and I am just going in and putting in some like shadow lines, basically adding color into the edges and into the kind of underlapping areas to make the braid look a little bit more defined. And I just basically alternate into the next color when I get there. And if I do need to go in and add more color and I've like really wet an area, I went and dried it before I went in and put in some of the dark line work, because if your paper's wet or you've got wet paint there, your ink is going to smoosh right in there, just like watercolor. Oh, and if you are doing that, you could do this with a ballpoint pen and use your watercolors, your kids' watercolors. Please don't think that you can't do Inktober, you can't play along because you don't have exactly what I have. That's nonsense. You can use whatever you have. You can use crayons. I mean, that's not ink, but seriously, use what you have and don't worry about it. Have fun. The whole point for this, for me, is to challenge myself to get a little bit more creative and to rely on reference photos a little bit less, and also improve my speed and accuracy in drawing. So that's what I'm trying to get out of this month, and you can get whatever you want to get out of it. Now I'm going in with that brush pen that I told you about, and I am accentuating the lines that I want to be a little bit darker. The more you press down on these brush pens, the thicker the line you'll get, and you can go up on the tip of it and you can get a really fine line. So that's a really great practice, to practice with any of those brush pens and vary your line weight and see what sort of variety of line you can get from one of those pens. And I know there are better brush pens out there on the market. I haven't experimented with too many of them, but pick one up and give it a try and see what you think. This one's good enough for me. If I need more control, I can always grab a brush and some ink, because I have loads of brushes. So now I thought that maybe I would go ahead and use some opaque white, and this is a white paint pen. This is called a Paint Over Pen by Jane Davenport, and this will kind of sink into the colors underneath, because those are dye-based colors. It's not a big deal, and it didn't dirty up the tip of my pen at all. It just wants to sink a little bit because of the dye color underneath, and that's fine with me. That's only my mid highlight. My high highlight I'm doing with the Uniball Signo pen, and I had my friend Rich told me that he's had trouble with the Signo pens when he hasn't let his paint dry long enough or his paper dry long enough. I and he waits 24 hours. I don't wait. I hit it with a heat gun, but I just go for it. If some of the color bleeds up through it, it doesn't really bother me. I'll just go over it later and put another coat down a pen. But that could be your issue if you're having trouble with your gel pens, that your surface underneath is not dry enough and you're kind of picking up moisture and picking up other media, and it's clogging up your pens or bothering your pens. And so I'm giving it another dry because I might want to go over with another layer. I decided to go back in with a little bit more of my, I think this was the superfine, and I'm just going in and adding some just little hairs for definition and to just bring out a little bit more interest. And it's basically, you know, at this point, you can do as much or as little as you want. I think it's fun to go in and fuss around with it because it was such a fun painting to do. And I always love the highlight stage. It's kind of like sprinkling, you know, well, we call them jimmies in New England, on your ice cream. You know, it's sprinkling the sprinkles on top. It's giving it a little bit of extra pizzazz and making it all glossy and pretty. And I'm really loving the way this came out. I feel like she's like some, you know, modern, cool, funky Rapunzel or something. So are you doing Inktober? I'd love to know in the comments below. Let me know what you think of this illustration. I'll bring it up to the camera so you can have a closer look. I had such a ball painting this. I hope you are enjoying these daily creative prompts, and I hope you're playing along too. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy crafting.